You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
من هناك لشوارزنيجر
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Welcome to Soccer Today. I'm Duane Rollins along with Kevin Laramee. This is also USL. It's usually USL Wednesdays, but it'll be USL Thursdays today. That will start in 15 minutes time, Kevin. We have a lot of great show basically today, previewing the PDL semifinal weekend. We have Todd Eason on. He is the director of the PDL, who's going to give us a bit of a state of the league there. And there's Canadian content in this. The Calgary Foothills U23 team, Tommy Wheeldon Jr., he's their coach. He's going to come on to talk about that semifinal. But before we do any of that, Kevin, how are you?
I am doing pretty good. Still impressed by Maxime Crepeau's save during the homegrown game last night, but not really necessarily impressed by the rest of that game.
Yeah, it was a little dull. As I was saying off air, I tweeted this as well, that it looked like the homegrowns look like a bunch of players that don't play a whole lot in their home club being thrown together at the last minute and expected to play a game, which is, precisely what they were.
Against an actual team that plays together a few times a year as a national team, youth program. So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 2-0 for Mexico over the MLS homegrowns, the Chipotle MLS homegrowns. Do you want a burrito?
I actually kind of do, but I'll probably go with Ranchos Nuevo instead.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. The burrito boys, they couldn't quite get it done last night. Some Canadian content off the top because we are a Canadian show based in Canada anyway. We're a North American show that's based in Canada, but we do like to talk about our Canadian boys because who else will if we won't? Jordan Hamilton, as you said, Crepeau, he had a decent second half. They talked a lot about him in the amount. They talked a lot about his experience in USL and how valuable it was for him, and how basically he was at an advantage to other keepers because he was getting a lot of shots.
It was actually, yes, he's ahead of the other keepers because, well, he plays. That's the difference. Either with FC Montreal, practice against the Drogba almost every day, and on top of it, he represents Canada at the youth level, upcoming in many, many different tournaments. So, no, of course, Maxime Crepeau's playing.
They were very diplomatic on the broadcast, talking about how FC Montreal approaches things differently, is how they said it.
Yes.
And then they proceeded to talk about how he was averaging over 2 goals against a game. But that was probably because he was averaging about 15, 16 shots at him a game. So,
well, there's that too.
Yeah, so that was kind of funny. But no, it's good to get him some action out there. And it's too bad that it takes exhibitions like this to see these guys and to profile them. But nonetheless, that's why we are going to talk about it a bit. I thought it was really it was a nice night for the Canadian teams. I mean, minus Vancouver, who didn't have a representative there. But Toronto and Montreal were both well represented in the game with the players that were out there. Jordan Hamilton and Jay Chapman. Jay Chapman, speaking of which, he won a PDL championship a couple of years ago. So that plays in nice to the rest of our conversation today. But Chapman and Hamilton were linking up really well, and it showed, it pretty much underlined that familiarity was going to allow players to play well together. They only played the first half. I think that was by design because Chapman and Hamilton are two players that are actually getting significant time in Major League Soccer. That was a rarity on the rosters, and it showed. You could tell the players that were getting more time were standing out, and I guess that stands to reason, Kevin. And it's going to be the next challenge in Major League Soccer, as we've talked about many times, of how to integrate these kids in a little bit more.
No, exactly. It'll be interesting, and it'll be interesting too tonight, because tonight we're getting the All-Star game, Duane, your favorite game of the entire season in Major League Soccer. Well, it's tonight with Arsenal, North London versus North America, apparently.
Yeah, because we're ignoring Mexico and we're ignoring Spurs because I guess apparently, according to MLS marketers, that's got to be North London versus North America, and there's basically these graphics that are on walls around the stadium in San Jose, where they have North America written kind of stylistically on like a teeter-totter, way like much heavier than North London, which is kind of little tiny up at the top of the teeter-totter. As I said, the only problem with this, of course, is that North London would by any reasonable calculation at least include Spurs. There are many other teams that would play in the area that would be North London. Arsenal is the biggest by a little bit over Spurs.
Yeah, you could say.
Don't throw your iPhone at me, Spurs fans. They're a little bit more successful over the course of the years. We can't deny this. However, it's, United's bigger than City. There, I said it, but that's fine. It's fine.
Bigger is always better. That's always a question too. But just North America. It's funny because if you look at the composition of the team, it's not just North America at all. So that's the other funny part of it.
Robbie Keane's Javinko is going to be confused to know these
representing North America. Fine, whatever. Piatti, okay. Argentina's now, okay. No, never mind.
Yeah, it's a Major League Soccer all-star team versus a half-interested Arsenal preseason roster is what it is. But alas.
Exactly.
Look, I watched my first preseason football this morning. I woke up and on my feed it was surrounded. Dortmund was playing City. I'm like, fine.
I tried to watch Chelsea-Liverpool last night and it was just I couldn't. Yeah, but I couldn't handle the sideline. I couldn't handle the view of the camera. I just couldn't handle it. I'm like, you know what? This doesn't look right.
Exactly.
At the Rose Bowl with the camera way too high, I was no, this won't cut it. And we even forgot to talk about it earlier this week. The derby that was supposed to be in Shanghai, City against United, was canceled due to very, very poor pitch. So we kind of got our wish that the first United City derby of the year, wasn't one.
Yeah, the Manchester derby should really only be played in Manchester or, the northern suburbs of Manchester. However, it's glad that happened there. This one, there was someone that messaging. I responded to this, and it got a little traction yesterday. So we'll talk about this a little quickly. He was an Arsenal fan that's also, I believe, a Colorado Rapids fan who was saying, I'm really torn. I don't know who to cheer for tomorrow. Should I cheer for Arsenal or should I cheer for MLS? And I don't want to tell anyone who to cheer for because obviously, as we said before on the show, you can support this game and cheer for whoever you like. But to me, this is a no-brainer. Why would you cheer against Arsenal for a team that doesn't really exist in any real way? It's a marketing construct, right? I don't understand why anyone who was legitimately an Arsenal fan would not want Arsenal to be successful and competitive tonight. You may, I guess, not want the league to embarrass itself, but I don't care. If they lost 5-0 tonight, it wouldn't mean a damn thing.
Exactly. I think you just put the nail on the head when it doesn't mean anything. It's not, this team doesn't represent the state of the league in a way that, look, teams actually practice together for weeks and months and get chemistry and instinct together and get to know where the ball's going to be, where the player's going to be at all times. Those type of things are together as a team. Teams are part of the league, not just players. So this team of All-Star game doesn't represent the state of the league. And if they lose 10-0, it doesn't mean that Major League Soccer is not a good league.
No, exactly. And if they win 2-0, it doesn't mean that MLS is
exactly
better than Arsenal. That's silly talk. They defeated Chelsea a couple years ago. D-Rose scored a goal in that game, and we were very excited up here that D-Rose scored against Chelsea. But it didn't mean that D-Rose was going to get signed by Chelsea anytime soon either. Now, did it? So last, are you gonna watch?
Well, yeah, I kind of have to, so I'm gonna watch. But am I gonna cheer? That's probably not gonna happen.
I'll tell you a quick story about this. We have some time to kill here before our interview. So I might be the only person on earth that actually suffered violence because of the Major League Soccer All-Star game. Do
tell. How did you get beat up or something?
Okay, this is a famous story within the U sector and TFC circles in some ways. Famous, I use the term loosely, but at any rate, I was at the Dufferin Gate many, many years ago. The Dufferin Gate was an infamous bar that was the original bar that the U sector supporters group at TFC gravitated to pre and post games. It was a Parkdale bar. Parkdale, for those that don't know, is a down market area of Toronto, we'll call it. It's a little getting regentrified in areas, but the gate was not in one of those gentrified areas during this time. Certainly, if you go to BMO Field, you'll think it's surrounded by a very nice area of Toronto. That's because you're in Liberty Village. If you walk 3 blocks north, not so much anymore. And that's where we were at any rate. We were watching on a very staticky TV, a little tiny. I think it was like a 12-inch TV with like bunny ears on top of it. We were pulling in the MLS All-Star game, about 5 of us, after TFC had drawn the Puerto Rico Islanders 0-0 in the Champions League and been eliminated. It was one of the worst games in TFC history. That was just Bill Gaudette got hit in the head by beer, and that was the best thing about the whole game. It was just one of those games. So we're gathered around this little TV watching through static the MLS All-Stars, and there were these 2 guys in this booth that we didn't know that were wearing TFC gear for some reason, because they didn't seem like TFC fans. That were doing nothing but chirping the MLS. The MLS sucks. The MLS is this. Why the hell would anyone watch the MLS? They're wearing TFC gear at the time, at any rate. But that's aside.
TFC's part of MLS.
So to protect the innocent, I will remove their names. But a friend of mine, let's call him Barry Rambo. Barry Rambo, and those that know who I'm talking about will laugh at that. Barry Rambo approached one of these guys, and Barry's a pretty big guy. Barry's of Scottish descent, too. So he has a bigness and a anger that is sometimes associated with the Scots. He was looking over him and pointing down at him when I came out of the bathroom. And there's this gathering of people around this one little guy who's getting screamed at by Barry Rambo. And I walked over and to his friend and I went, you might want to just calm your friend down because there's like 6 of us here and there's only 2 of you. And I wasn't meaning to threaten him, honestly. But at that point in time, he took it that way. He said, "Pardon me," looked at me and fully headbutted me in the nose. Blood all over the place. My beer goes flying. All hell breaks loose. We owned that bar in many ways, not literally, but figuratively. We owned that bar. So the owner was like, "Just get him out. Just get him out." So my friends picked him up as I was basically blinded by blood at this point, and ran him into one chair and ran him into another chair, ran him into the door frame, ran him into the curb and dropped him there. And that was the last we saw him. So I suffered a broken nose. To this day, if I push on it the right way, it still hurts. Right? I'm doing it right now. Yep, it still hurts. Because of the MLS All-Star game. So
nothing happens?
I have bled for this game.
Who says nothing happens during the MLS All-Star game or surrounding the MLS All-Star games? To be quite honest, we don't suggest any listeners do what either the corporate or Duane in the same story. Do it at your own risk.
Wasn't my fault. I mean, anyway, it wasn't like I was starting a fight over the MLS All-Star game. I just got headbutted.
Famous last words. Wasn't my fault.
And true story to finish it. It became this urban legend in the around TFC supporters culture at that point, because there were people at another bar just down the street that started to hear about it, and I decided to stay back and sort of just decompress a little bit, because the most logical thing to do when you've broken your nose at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and it was 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, by the way, is to stay at the bar and continue to finish your beer. So I stayed.
Yes, it helps with the pain.
Exactly. Well, it did help with the pain, let me tell you. So yeah, I stayed behind. I was the last person in the bar that night, and then the bar closed before we opened to the next game. So I was the last person ever in the Dufferin Gate amongst the soccer supporters crowd. I went back to the other bar at that point with blood all over my shirt. Someone lent me this blue T-shirt that I still own to this day, and every time I put it on, I only sleep in it now, basically. Every time I put it on, I think, hey, it's my broken nose T-shirt.
Cool story, Duane. Cool story.
All right. On that professional note, let's take a break now. We're going to get Todd Eason on, who is the director of the PDL, and we'll have a little conversation about the state of the PDL as we start the USL Radio.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And we are back on Soccer Today. It's a great pleasure that we welcome Todd Eason, Director of the USL to the PDL USL. Todd, how you doing today?
I am great. Thanks for having me.
Todd, we wanted to have you on because it, of course, is the PDL semifinals this weekend to have a bit of a state of the league for us to talk about where you think things are right now, and in particular with the 4 teams that are still remaining. I know you're the director, so you have to be neutral about this, but could you just sort of set the scene on these 4 remaining clubs and tell us a bit about what they are and what they bring to PDL?
Sure. The finals or the semifinals are this Saturday, and we have 4 very unique teams that have gotten to this point, and they're vastly different in a lot of ways, which is kind of exciting, and I think something that a lot of the teams might tune into, and especially their fans, because and I could take each one of them and give you a little background on each one of them, and you can kind of see how they're different. And because I think internally they're all built a different way, and I think they all have different focuses. Obviously, the one focus right now is to win the championship, but a team like Michigan Bucks, which has been a perennial powerhouse for quite some time, their big focus is trying to move players on to the pro levels, and they do a lot within scouting and recruiting to get some of the top college players in the country or North America into camp so that they can push them on and get them the exposure that they need. And then you have someone like Ocean City, who's slightly different, and they focus some on the business side of their franchise of trying to raise money through sponsorship and to market their camps, but also equally as effective in finding players that are probably the top prospects within their region. They've got a few exceptional players this year that are from different levels of the college game, whether it be a junior college or a D2 model or NAIA school that are all in camp and have been successful there. Midland is unique in that obviously they're the furthest south team that has a lot of the international flair to their game, as well as the older players, and they do focus on the business model a lot to try to sell tickets and raise funds to become stable each year. And then you have Calgary, which is exciting in their second year to come into the league and have a lot of local talent. A lot of Canadian players are within their camp, from Calgary University to out in Saskatchewan, and have been very successful in getting to where they are. And they started with grassroots and have moved up and have focused on the developmental side quite a bit. And here they have a lot of kids that come from their youth organization and put together a great level of play on the field. So all 4 of these teams are really different in a lot of ways, as you can tell, and it's just going to make for a great Final Four.
Yeah, you mentioned just the different philosophies at play here. I think when most people think PDL, they kind of their reaction is to consider it kind of the summer league for the NCAA players or what have you. And what I'm hearing from you is, do you think that the league's kind of moving away from that model where it's just kind of a summer league for college players?
Well, it's 85% of all the players that are registered in the PDL are university-based players, and that is, kind of our model, being a U23 league. That's what we do cater to. But we do find a lot of the academy kids, the U18s, some of the pro academies playing in this league to get a bit more of a challenge. But also we have some former professional players and that have, put their toes in the water of the professional ranks for a year or two, and then maybe had been released and are coming back to showcase themselves again to get back up to that level. So, there is a variety for sure, but again, 85% of our players are university-based.
Todd, you mentioned the pro academies and the as well individual single academies that are using PDL as their top team of the academy system. Where does the landscape fits now with the growth of the USL and most amount of MLS 2 sides in USL? And you look at the PDL level now growing as well in a U23 fashion. What's the landscape look like? And is it positioned at the top academy system, at the top tier for a lot of individual academies in the United States?
Yeah, I think it's what a lot of the pro academies and even USL academies, or just the traditional academies that are out there, are using it as an extended way to develop their players. And what the academies can do at a top U18 level is one thing, but to continue that track for 3 more months in the summer has helped these players to, become accustomed to maybe a professional length of a season. And I think we're seeing more and more USL clubs looking to establish this model, not only for developmental side, but even for young executives to basically develop within an administrative level, move up to be within their pro organization there, or even putting them into a situation where they can move into the MLS. So, our model is essentially path to pro, but it's covered in a lot of different bases, whether it be on the field or even in the office. So we're seeing a lot more of that with our USL clubs, finding that as a resource for players, but admin office officials, but US or MLS, even for that, is doing the same. And we have a great model with New York Red Bull and also TFC that are developing these players from U14 up to basically instill their philosophy and how they want to play. And they want the players to play in U23 model for the USL side, or even the MLS side if they're ready for that level. So we are seeing a lot more of these teams wanting to take on a U23 model for sure.
There's a lot of movement, Todd, in the league. Every year we have a couple of new leagues, and unfortunately we have a team. And every year, unfortunately, we lose a couple. What's the upcoming future for this league next year? Is there anything we have to get excited for?
I'm sorry, you're breaking out a little bit there, and I didn't catch all of that.
A lot of new teams appear every year in the PDL. A couple of fold, unfortunately. What we have to be excited for 2017?
Well, I think it's the same, a lot of the same that we have seen this year, where you have new clubs like Calgary coming through and being successful model. But I think also with the development of USL and how that has grown to be one of the largest professional leagues in the world, we're seeing a lot of those teams, again, take on a U23 model that has different focuses within their own structure, but again, trying to bring in players that they can develop and to build around what their philosophy is within their organization, and prepare them for the professional ranks. So I think we'll definitely see a lot more of the USL clubs moving into this kind of model, as the MLS have already shown. And I think that's going to be exciting for our league as it fills out. And, we start to see more and more teams that find an interest in not only the player development, but also the business development.
Todd, you mentioned the business side and the club side of thing. We always focus, I think, on the development of players for obvious reasons. That is the reason we're here, right? But how important is the development of standards across the board at a club level to the evolution and the development of the sport in North America? And what role does PDL play in elevating those standards at the club level?
Well, the one thing that is very unique about our organization here is that we do provide a lot of support within club services, helping these investors or owners to build their franchise into a higher level or a more stable level, being able to get out in the community and establish themselves and run it as a professional organization. So we have the unique ability here to provide those services for them. We have staff, all over the office that are reaching out to teams, helping them to build their market and successful. And the reason we want to do that is because we are essentially a franchised organization, or focus on the franchise element of these teams. We want them to be sustainable year after year, and being able to create that is beneficial to them and very important. So, I think that's the one thing that we do try to provide for these teams, and I think it's something that they really grab onto and run with, and it's made a lot of these teams very very successful, especially on the business side.
Todd, I would like to get your opinion on one philosophy of development that we've seen in the USL, and it's applicable in the PDL as well. Do you, as a team, go a little bit younger, or do you go a little bit older with veteran experience to achieve results? We see different results every year. Some of those teams are a little older side, some of them are a younger side. What's your thought on that philosophy that we've seen in the USL as well as the PDL over the last few seasons?
Yeah, we do want to focus on the younger player. We have our top prospect list that is on the website that we started last year, and now it's a lot more prominent on the website as we're showcasing these players a little bit more. But that is only directed towards. We do have older players. Us being based out of Florida, I do get to see a lot of the teams down here on a continual basis, and a lot of their players are older, former professional players and so forth. But I think the majority of the country, they do focus on the academy players, the players that have a great future to go pro. But again, going back to the college model, focusing on that U18 to U23 age group, and our average age right now is 21. So that is obviously a focus throughout the league and something that we're going to continue to maintain. And we do have guidelines in place to regulate that. With teams are only allowed to roster 8 overage players and 10 international players at this time. So we do try to keep the number down so that we can focus on the development of the younger player.
We often see sort of a tug of war, a struggle between the balance of developing players and focusing on development and winning the actual scoreboard stuff. Well, where do you think most of your teams fall in that equation? Do you think that they're more interested in how many teams that they put onto another level, or do you think a lot of them are mostly focused on just what the scoreboard says at the end of the day?
Yeah, that could be split. I think going into Saturday, they're focused on the scoreboard now, but I think a lot of teams are definitely, and I brought up the Michigan Bucks and Ocean City, people that have proven paths of pushing players into the pro ranks. I think that is still common amongst the majority of our teams. They want to see players move on because it brings great recognition to their own team. That's something that they can market, something that they can advertise about what their program is doing for players. And I think overall, I think most of our teams are looking to push players on to the professional ranks more so than what the scoreboard says. And we see that especially in the MLS markets, the Chicago Fire, the TFC, even Sounders and Portland. A lot of those teams are focused more on helping their players get to the next level than very happy with that. Again, because our philosophy here within the league is to help our players move on to the pro ranks. So that is very important amongst all the teams and something that we constantly push at our winter meetings.
I'm wondering, there has been some talk here in Canada to try and move away from the American system. Of course, the Canadian teams have been quite successful in PDL in the last few years on the scoreboard. We see Calgary in the Final Four this year. Obviously, Kitchener-Waterloo was successful a couple of years ago. What is the state of that? Do you anticipate that there will be a Canadian presence in your league for years to come, or do you think that you'll start to see the CSA develop some of its own models and move away from the PDL?
Yeah, we really hope so. Like you said, the Canadian teams have been very successful in our league, and it's always great to see a KW United win it the way they did last year, and then also Calgary. We've also had FC London, who's been very successful in our league, and we really hope they do stay with us. I think it's been beneficial to them. They see the value of it, and we hope to continue to have that partnership come. So that's what we look forward to within our league, and hope that we can continue to work with those teams to help them.
Is there been any conversations with the CSA about some of those restrictions that they're talking about?
We haven't gone into too much depth with it. We're obviously aware of it, and something that we're in support of. And if CSA is looking to do something, then, we are in support of it. We want to see players continue to develop no matter where they are. And if we can provide multiple leagues and leagues for these players to do so, then I say we need to do it.
Just a final overall thought. What is your feeling right now in terms of the state of the PDL, in terms of where it was in the past to where it is now? Do you feel that this is a league that's moving forward and getting better each year? Or do you feel that maybe with some of the devaluing of the NCAA that maybe it's sort of stagnated and taken a step back in recent years? Where do you think the league stands right now compared to the past?
Well, I think in my 2 years here, we, the same amount of players that have gone as MLS draftees in the Super Draft. We're always providing the MLS Super Draft players to move on, and we're sitting at 70% of all draftees PDL experience, and so we see that the strength of the players that come through the PDL are still there. As some of the players are moving on a little bit quicker and maybe leaving college early to go into a USL club. That's a positive thing. And I think then look at and help give exposure to and get to that level as well. But as of right now, we still see the strength of the players and feel that it's always going to be that way moving forward. So we're happy about it and just want to continue to provide that platform for these players to use to get to that next level.
When you're at a semifinal level, are you more of a business person or more of a fan when you get to the semifinal level of your league's final?
Yeah, it'd be interesting this weekend because I think we have two host venues that are going to have great fan support and so forth. And sometimes I'll get caught up in that and enjoy the cheering aspect of it. But I guess I have to put on the business face every once in a while and show that I'm truly neutral in every way. But I think it's going to be an exciting weekend for sure. I think there's a lot of exposure out there of our clubs and themselves, and then some of the featured players on each of these teams. So it's going to be fun to watch them live, and I think I've got to neutrally say I'm cheering them all on.
Fair enough. Are there ways for people outside the markets to take these games in to enjoy them?
Yeah, we have a match center within our website, uslpdl.com, and both games are listed up there, and they will be streamed live. Ocean City will be hosting Calgary at 5:00 Eastern on Saturday, and then the Michigan Bucks will be hosting Midland at 7:30 that same day Eastern time. So you can check it out on uslpdl.com under the Match Center tab.
All right, Todd, we do appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed the games this weekend.
Thanks, guys. Glad to be on, and thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Hey, it's Kevin of the Sports Podcasting Network. On SPN, on top of What's the Score, the Sports News Quiz, you can find a plethora of great sports podcasts. Hardwood Radio, Gridiron Radio, Sports, It's in the Game, Scuderia F1, the second most listened to F1 podcast in the whole world, Soccer Today, live radio shows like Open Lines After Dark, MLS Postgame Show, Two Solitudes Soccer Podcast, Off the Woodworks, and much, much more. All that on the Sports Podcasting Network.com. And welcome back to Soccer Today. Duane, it's been quite interesting, the conversation with Todd, and we're getting quite excited for the semifinal of the PDL.
Yeah, it'll be a good weekend for that. If you enjoy that level of soccer, for sure, I encourage you to check that out. Obviously, a Canadian cheering interest. That what I really like about Calgary, and we'll talk about them hopefully when we get Tommy on the line, Tommy Wheeldon, the junior, the coach out there. When we get him on the line, hopefully we'll talk about sort of how they've constructed that team. And as Todd said, it's very local. It's very focused on Canadian talent, on CIS talent. And I really like that, because this is I think there's been this perception in Canada for years that the CIS level is inferior to the NCAA level. It's not the way to go if you want to develop and play at a top level. And I think that this Foothills program that Tommy runs is sort of showing that. So that's something I'm interested in as well to watch. And certainly I'm very much of two minds when it comes to this PDL restrictions in Canada. I do see very much here in Ontario why it makes a lot of sense to try and encourage the growth of League One Ontario rather than continuing to put our resources and our talent into PDL. I think that it makes sense for us to have our own programs, but where there's not that option, I do think that there's still a role for the PDL to play. I just think that if there is an option to stay local, that we should. And I don't think that it's going to be very long before League One Ontario starts to match what PDL looks like.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you kind of want to have as well a cost-saving type of aspect to your league. And just mentioned Calgary and mentioned other like Thunder Bay, like you mentioned earlier. It's a lot of travels involved as well for that type of league. Even though it's a short period in the year, it's still a lot of travels involved. So travel equal cost at that level. It's a lot of cost, and it's the majority of a team's budget. It goes on travel expenses. So no, it does make sense if you want to keep it regional in the cost-saving aspect of things as well.
Yeah, precisely. Look, I think that there's room as well, and I sometimes think this, and I struggle with USL in this the same way. Like if there's the USL right now is restricted, partly to get the Canadian Premier League going. I do think that if there's room somewhere down the line for the USL to come back into Canada, maybe into markets like London and Kitchener to sort of upgrade their markets, that might be worthwhile. But I do think we need to focus on getting our own stuff going first. And that's kind of where I am there. Kevin, do you want to try and get Tommy on the line now?
Yes, we'll take a break and we'll be right back here on Soccer Today. You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, Open Lines After Dark, 5 Rings Daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. Hey, it's Kevin of the Sports Podcasting Network. On SPN, on top of What's the Score, the Sports News Quiz, you can find a plethora of great sports podcasts. Hardwood Radio, Gridiron Radio, Sports, It's in the Game, Scuderia F1, the second most listened to F1 podcast in the whole world, Soccer Today, live radio shows like Open Lines After Dark, MLS Postgame Show, Two Solitudes Soccer Podcast, Off the Woodworks, and much, much more. All that on the Sports Podcasting Network.com. And we're back on Soccer Today. It's with great pleasure that we welcome Tommy Wheeldon Jr., head coach of Calgary Foothills. How you doing, Tommy?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
We're doing great.
Tommy, of course, we wanted to have you on because Calgary's had a remarkable season, remarkable run in the playoffs, and a semifinal match coming up this weekend. Just in general way, what are your feelings heading into this? How are you feeling about the season? How are you feeling about this weekend?
Do you know what? It's been a bit of a surreal run so far. We started this project, 3 years ago, had an exhibition season and had our first season last year. And we only lost 2 of the games, but tied 7. So we knew we were competitive. We just need to find the level, find a couple of pieces. But our mission all along has been to develop and produce Canadian players. And, we've been running a successful academy for a long time, and this is just the icing on it. So this season, we've just set targets, be in a position for a playoff hunt out of our division. And as you know, our division is one of the strongest with the Seattle Sounders and Portland Timbers under 23s, along with Kitsap Pumas, who are a professional side, Lane United, very good side. So we just set parameters. Once we hit that, we said, right, let's win our play-in, which we did against Sounders. Then we're in the Western Conference, and we did our homework there, and belief grew. So we won that, and now we're in the Final Four. We're ready to go again. So we've got this far. We're in it to win it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Canadian and the local philosophy, because there have been successful PDL teams in Canada in the past, and I don't want to dismiss what they did, but they've often relied on imports. A lot of people coming in from outside. You do not. What is the basis of that, and why is that important to the Foothills?
Well, do you know what? Our model's different. So you look around the others. KW United were great last year. They won it. But they get players from all over. Ours is attached to a youth club. So if you want to be a top academy, you can't stop at U18s. You have to have somewhere for these kids to progress into. So we've got a great track record of sending out, your Charlie Traffords overseas, your Sam Adekubis, Owen Hargreaves, Kevin McKenna's. And we wanted to continue that, but we also wanted to have an option for the players that just might need a little bit extra to work in. So, out of our, 26 squad, I think half of them are from within our own academy. Another quarter of them would be from, local clubs that, we've seen along the way, played against, that are talented boys. And then, the other quarter would be just from outside. We've got a couple of lads from Simon Fraser University. My brother, who's an experienced player, that gives us the player coach role. And yeah, it's we just believe that if we're to really make a difference in Canadian soccer, we got to provide a place to play, and we've got to back that up by playing our players in these situations. So that's what we're doing.
Tommy, the big question is always in development, how important is winning? We see Calgary Foothills right now in the semifinals, so obviously winning is important. But what can you tell to that philosophy of it's not necessarily the be-all, end-all, but it's just a result of a process?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. I mean, we do. Listen, we're a competitive club. We've always grown up with that. We've got very exceptional players that have gone on and won provincial championships or won national championships, and it's been a byproduct of the process. We're very big on developing the technique early through our grassroots and our skills. And as they get into 13, 14, learning, the 11v11 game, different formations. As they get to 16s and 18s, we're starting to say, right now, can we be competitive enough to push on? And we're doing that. So part of our PDL journey, a lot of these guys have that DNA already in them. So we've played around with different formations. We've played with tactics, and that's part of the learning. But with that learning, the boys are developing a game plan that we're very hard to beat. So yeah, it's become a byproduct, but absolutely we work on being that winning mentality. It's something, I'm a believer. I worked with the Canada under 17s. When we went down to the last World Cup qualifiers, I was under the belief, right, let's go down here and let's win this thing. We don't want to go and say, we're playing Mexico and, we're playing Costa Rica. Absolutely, they've got strengths, but you've got to look at what their strengths are, what your strengths are, and it's a chess match. You've got to nullify them. So winning has to be part of their development.
Now, one thing that's particular to the situation of the Calgary Foothills, as well as a lot of travel in a short period of time, and now leads to this point of the season, how damaging is for the players the amount of travel involved with a team in Calgary playing in the PDL? Yes, it's regional, but you still have travels, like you mentioned, to the Portland, Seattle, and all those regions. Mm-hmm. How difficult is the travel for the players during a short season like this?
I think they enjoy it. I think because we're that pro-am status, so they're not. They're not fully paid professionals. Mm-hmm. Many of them are still elite college level players aspiring to be that. We run it as professionally as we can to give them that experience. But listen, it does take its toll. But I think winning helps, and I think when you go in there, we make it. And when I was a player, we'd go to these places, and all you'd ever see is, airports, hotel rooms, and locker rooms, and the field, and then gone. So you'd never experience the culture. So I've made it a mandate as a coach now that every time we go to these places, we have a portion of half a day to go and experience where we're at. So, when we were in Seattle, we went to Pike Place and the Starbucks. When we were in Victoria, we were at the Parliament buildings. And just, I think it's important for the players to have that too. And I think that helps when you're traveling.
Fair enough, Tommy. Could you just talk about your team a little bit now? We've talked a little bit about the philosophies and all that sort of stuff. This is a team that's playing for a championship over the next couple weekends, hopefully 2 weekends. What are the strengths? What might you have to overcome to defeat your opponent on the weekend?
Well, our strengths, we're very solid defensively. I think we've conceded one of the least in the whole division, and we've worked hard on that. We've worked hard on building the play through the thirds and in attack. And, we signed a young goalkeeper. Last year we had Sean Melvin, who's now with the Whitecaps, and he was fantastic. But we need a replacement. So we took a chance on a connection. My assistant, Carl Oram, and Cam Lieberman, a friend of mine, were with Grant McEwen University, and said, you got to look at this kid. He's 19. He's raw, and you open trial, just have a look at him. And this lad, Dylan Powell, he came down. He's only 19, and he's kept 5 shutouts this year. But they've been big saves at big moments. And, in any sport, you got to have some clutch. And he's been clutch when it's counted. And he made a big penalty save in our playoff game against Seattle Sounders when the score was 1-1, second half. He's made a big save, and we go on to win it 3-1 in extra time. Dominic Zator, a homegrown player. He's been with the club since he was 10. He's playing at the University of Calgary. The lad is 6'3", and he's almost like John Stones. He gets all the raves. If this lad was in Europe, the way he reads the game and comes out the back, he's unbelievable, and he's an athlete. He could go right away now and go and play in Montreal, TFC, or Whitecaps backline with ease. And we're hoping that'll happen for him. We've got Elijah Adekubi in midfield, who's been our playmaker. He's the younger brother of Sam, who's with the Whitecaps, obviously. But he was always in his shadow. But he's a different type of player. He's a ball player. He's a holding midfielder, and he's had a great season, along with Mitch Bosch, who does tireless running, and then Dominic Russo up top. You always need a goal scorer, and he's had a great foil in G-Suck area. But Dominic Russo is a powerhouse. He's built like a bison. I think the commentators in Tucson were saying that, and he holds the ball up well. He spins, he turns. He's not afraid to shoot. He's not afraid of the physical game, and he's another lad that's could play in the MLS like tomorrow if it was presented, because he's fast. He's got skill and could handle it.
What is your path to victory, do you believe, in Saturday?
Well, the team we're playing against, they've scored a lot of goals. I think their top scorer is on 14 goals. Chevy Walsh, Jamaican player, big, powerful athlete. They've got another lad, Nathan Regis. They've got a lot of goals in their team. And, we're fortunate now with online games that you can see, and I'm sure they're doing their homework on us. But, for me, it'll be one of the best attacks against one of the best defences. But in our team, we've also got one of the best attacks. So for us, if we can nullify their threats, we feel we've got enough ability to put them on the back foot too. So we've just got to shut them down, stop their runs in behind, and they've got to be able to handle our threat up top. And for me, I'm confident that we can stick to a game plan.
Tommy, I want to talk about Calgary as a market in general. Obviously, the Foothills are doing quite well here. This is a successful club that's been around for a long time. Those of us that have followed Canadian soccer know that name quite well. There are rumors about the potential of a professional league starting in this country soon. Do you feel that Calgary as a market could support that?
Yeah, listen, I think there's room for everything. Well, I mean, if there's a Canadian CPL and there's the American leagues, it's no different than you see in England, with the Welsh league still appearing and the Irish league still appearing, but teams still playing in the EPL, etc. For me, absolutely. What it does, it gives more places for Canadian players to play, more places for Canadian coaches to develop in competitive environments, and more places for Canadian officials to officiate. So it has to be a win-win, but there definitely would be room for both. It just, again, all part of the process. For me, I think it should be, built on an under-23 league as a growth, extensions to these, successful academies that are happening across the country, and then grow it organically from there. And maybe it's a collaboration with universities as well, much like the PDL has done. And that's how you grow the league. I think if you just go, right, boom, Canadian Professional League, what you'll end up seeing is a lot of imports. And unless there's a cap on it, you've got to provide a place to play for Canadians. And that's got to be a mandate within the birth of the league.
Would you say, Tommy, that the Foothills are an ambitious club that maybe might look to move up to another level if and when that chance were ever to present itself?
Oh yeah, I can say 100% that's true. We're talking already as a board level, whether we create a strategic partnership or a standalone entity that we want to compete in the USL Pro or NASL. So we're looking at both options. It was always part of our vision. Within 5 years of the start of the PDL, by 2020, we want to progress the team into a higher caliber league. So we've done great strides in such a short season. But imagine if it was a longer season, giving our players more time to develop and grow. And so yeah, 100% we want into a higher caliber.
Working in the GTA where I work now with Ligue 1 Ontario, I see frontline talent all the time, and I've seen how much of an impact that league has had on the talent in the GTA in a short period of time. Do you feel that Alberta has been tapped in fully, or is there more talent that we could squeeze out of there if we had more better programs? Yeah,
there's loads. I'll tell you what it is. It comes down to high performance league. Ontario have done smashing in terms of bringing in League One and their high performance league. BC have started theirs, and what it does, it creates standards and expectations. It's minimum standards with coaching, minimum standards with playing. Financial constraints are always going to be there because we're a Canadian club and there's a lot of traveling. But I think Alberta needs to make the stride and go to a high performance league because there's talent in abundance, and we've shown that with our squad. It's not just from our club, but when we pick players from others. And the more high-performance leagues that crop up across the country, the more higher standards are available. So that's where I see that we've got to get that right. And then we've got, to have whether it's a League One on top of it. That's where I think the growth of the professional game could happen.
Your club has some CIS talent on there. It's always something I'm curious about. What role the CIS has in the future of the game in this country? Is it a level that can continue to help develop players? Absolutely.
I think it's a great pathway. You look at any of the top sports in North America, NBA, NFL, NHL, they recruit their players at 21, 22, out of the draft. And what that does is you're recruiting talent that played in a competitive league. You're recruiting young men versus, 18-year-olds straight out of an academy that don't have many life experiences. And you're also giving them a backdrop that if the pro game isn't for them, doesn't work out, or there's injuries, they've got an education to fall back on. And I think absolutely CIS has got a big part to play, and there should be discussions around and with those universities about collaboration on these leagues, because it's a wonderful model to follow. And I think sometimes actually it's ahead of some of the European ones that don't give these players an education. I think it's important in life skills.
With the success you've had in recent days, what's the attention been like in Calgary? Are you starting to get a little more press there? Are you starting to see people excited about this game on the weekend?
Yeah, I know it's press when my 6-year-old boy says, "Dad, you're on TV again," and he's seeing it. But no, it's been great, and it's the press have been receptive because there's no NHL going on right now. There's CFL has only just started, so it's timing is everything in any markets, and we've been fortunate to be a successful franchise. We're constantly on local TV channels, in the newspapers, on radios, podcasts like yourself. So it is gaining traction, but what it's doing is it's also bringing exposure not just to our club but to the game, and we need that for Calgary, because Calgary is a city of 1.2 million people, as you know, and it's a great sporting town, but unlike the biggest sporting cities across the country, we still have lacked that soccer content. So hopefully we're helping bring that, and we can kick on from here.
Fair enough. Are you going to bring a championship home in 2 weeks' time?
That's our ambition. We've set parameters along the way. We've set goal markers, and we're staying true to them. So we're in now the Final Four, so we're in it to win it.
All right, Tommy, we do appreciate your time, and we're in Canada, so we can cheer for you. We'll be cheering for you in the weekend.
I appreciate your support. Thanks, guys.
You are listening to SPN Radio, powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
There's some interesting nuggets in there if you want to dig a little deep, Kevin.
No, exactly. That little ambition part about the NASL or USL level. No, very interesting stuff here.
Yeah, look, in Calgary, I've been told for a long time now, maybe we'll wrap the show with a little bit of this. Calgary has always, to me, been the most likely market to emerge at the professional level next in this country. This was, I said this before the Canadian Premier League stuff started to be talked about. I also thought it was interesting that he sort of mentioned that there needs to be an evolution into the Canadian Premier League versus just a bang start. That sort of speaks to me about some of the debates that are happening around Canadian soccer right now about that league. I hope that those debates don't hold it back, because I think that we need to just start it, because we can debate ourselves into a circle. You know what I mean?
True.
If we don't just get something on the plate there. But he's absolutely right. Yeah, if they just tried to start from scratch, you'd be looking at probably an import-heavy league, and you do need to have something that protects the talent there. And you also need to make sure that the talent, you can put quotas in, but if the talent's not there to fill the quotas, you're making the league not as good as it could be. And again, it comes down to how I'm ambivalent about the need for more USL, NASL teams. And
those teams eventually, if you get more of those teams, eventually you get enough to just take those teams and start that league. You know what I mean? And we're getting close to it.
The counter of that is those, they continue to play in those leagues, and then the resistance to leave those leagues, and the money that could have been invested in starting the Canadian Premier League gets invested instead in an American system. That's the argument the CSA would give you back. And like, I see that argument. I understand that argument, which is why, even though I do think part of me agrees that starting more USL teams, starting more NASL teams might initially be a little bit better than starting the Canadian Premier League, I think long term it's still, you have to focus on the own solution. That's my opinion there. But I did think it was quite telling how ambitious this club is, and the Foothills are, and that meshes with stuff I've heard as well.
No, and a little history here. If you don't know, the Foothills were established in 1972 as a semi-pro academy, all those systems that evolved over the years, but it's been a brand that's been at Calgary since 1972. It's probably their most attention they ever got right now with the professional level, that, well, kind of professional PDL, semi-pro, we'll call it whatever you like, development league. So in that level, it's their highest achievement maybe right now. It's their glory days. So it's interesting to see what this can bring. And he mentioned the evolution, and probably about this example in this very own case of the Calgary Foothills, if they eventually take this academy, this system, and move into a full professional top team, well, the evolution will be right there. And it's like a blueprint that you can recreate here. Example, a Sigma in Toronto, another one in Montreal, somewhere. It's something that could be possible outside of USL and an ASL team. Those teams that exist at a smaller level grow into a Premier League team.
Yeah, for those that don't remember, the Foothills did actually emerge at a USL level. The A-League years back in the early 2000s, it only lasted one season. So that sort of speaks to some of the challenges as well. It's a different era now, though. I mean, the professional game is at a different standard. It's a good program, though. I've heard many good things about it over the years. Alberta has had some struggles in terms of internal politics. I think they're starting to emerge out of them now. Hopefully they are. I was liked hearing Tommy talk about the need for elite development leagues regionally, and hopefully Alberta can follow the suit of Ontario there. So a little curious, he said BC started theirs. I'd like to know what that is, but
yep. Let's not forget the PLSQ.
Yes, there we go. The PLSQ. Obviously the PSLQ and Ontario, I kind of think of them as the same at this point, Kevin.
Well, just because they play the Interprovincial Cup every year, it's kind of, they're close. They're partners. Let's just put it that way, because they are.
All right, and at the end of the show, to end the show, I should say this. Yesterday, the Ligue 1 Ontario All-Stars women played the Quebec Selects. Final score, Ontario 3, Quebec no score, Kevin.
Thanks for ending the show with this one, Duane. That's very appreciated. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, but what that does is it illustrates the need for the PLSQ to get in a women's division to try and close that gap, because that would benefit us as all, correct?
Correct, and it's in the works. There's a discussion that happened a few months ago, and it's in the works.
All right. That's going to wrap our show for today on Soccer Today. This is also proven the last 45 minutes to be USL radio for this week, so we do hope you enjoyed that. The PDL games are 5 o'clock this weekend. There's also League One Ontario Cup finals on Saturday as well. If you're local in Toronto, they're up at the Ontario Soccer Center. I'll be there. I'm going to try and do a little multitasking and watch a bit of this of Tommy and Calgary play in the PDL semifinals. Don't know how well I can do that, but certainly if you're at home and can't get up to the Ontario Soccer Centre, I encourage that. If you can get up to the Ontario Soccer Centre, go watch League One Ontario Cup finals, and support local soccer, folks, because that's what it's all about.
And tonight, to our greatest pleasure, the All-Star game of Major League Soccer, North America versus North London. And until tomorrow on SPN Radio, for Soccer Today, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.